Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam, and welcome back to the 2000 Project. I'm here. Russell from Notorious by Chance is here. Russell, how you doing?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Doing good. We started off before I we get too deep into these movies this time around. I wanted to shout out friend of the channel Jake Tato, who runs Lights Out Trivia. He actually commented on my Facebook post that in Play It to the Bone, the boxer that ended up ODing, we said that he died. It turns out he did not die. He just OD'd, but he somehow made it. So
Oh, well, okay. Yeah,
I wanted to bring that up just for the sake of we said the boxer died, but it turns out no, actually he did not. So
good catch. Yeah, good catch.
good catch by him. But we've got three movies to cover this time around, and when going into these three, Russell, and I think you can back me up on this, Boondock Saints, Down to You, and Eye of the Beholder. I thought out of those three, it would be Boondock Saints and two movies that I would just never forget. And in
100%.
the rankings are going to be very surprising. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, 100%. I thought for sure, just even thinking about it, I'm like, oh, this is probably how it's going to go. And the rankings are pleasantly surprising to obviously our listeners when they do listen and watch this. But nonetheless, three movies up and three movies down. But yeah, definitely surprising this week for sure.
Indeed, but if you do like this, leave a like, subscribe, do the thing. If you're listening on audio, give us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate that. But with that in mind, let's get going and let's talk about easily the most famous movie that we're going to be covering this time around. It's technically a 99 release. It released in Denmark of all places in 99, but didn't end up until January of 2000 here. Celebrating its 25th anniversary, it is the Boondock Saints.
Nomini Patri. Et Filii, Spiritus Sancti.
The Boondock Saints was directed by Troy Duffy and it starred Norman Reedus, Sean Patrick Flannery, and Willem Dafoe. And it tells the story of two members of the Irish mob named Connor and Murphy, played by Sean Patrick Flannery and Norman Reedus, respectively. And the movie kind of covers multiple things going on. It's honestly rather complicated, but we'll get to why that's a problem in just a bit. But it basically, there's a heist, there's things that go down. It's the Irish mob, it's the Italians, it's a really wired FBI agent played by Willem Dafoe, but we'll get to that. I had always heard about the Boondock Saints, Russell, and I had always heard that it had a reputation. So going into this, I'm like, okay, first time fully watching it, I'm looking forward to this. And it's okay, but I'm
Yeah.
slightly disappointed with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same. This is my first time watching it as well. I did see the second one in the theaters when it came out in 2009, which is kind of crazy because how can you see the sequel without, blah, blah, blah. You kind of get the gist of it. Like, okay, yeah, they're Irish guys. They are cleaning up the streets of Boston, so to speak, literally and figuratively. And that's pretty much all you need to know. Like, so going into this one, yeah, it has that notoriety of being this like, St. Patrick's themed film. And yeah, it has that reputation around it. And I thought I would gravitate towards this movie a lot more than I did.
This is a movie that you're either going to love or you're going to hate, I feel like. But somehow I think, Russell, we're kind of both like in the middle on it. This movie
Yeah,
has a weird structure, and that's my
it
biggest
does.
problem. My biggest problem with it. There's a term that says in media res, where it's like in the middle of the action, and it feels like in every sequence in this movie, we see the very bitter end of it, and then someone comes in and like, here's what really happened, and then we see the
Yeah,
action of it, and
yeah,
just rinse, lather, and repeat for 108 minutes. It,
yeah. I like we could do that once or twice. I'll forgive that. But when we're constantly doing it, like the action has already taken place. But how did we get here? let's rewind. Like, you know what I mean? It's back and forth with that. And I think, and like you and I were talking and texting back and forth with that. I'm glad I'm not the only one with that problem. And just the bevy of characters. There is so much. It's so oversaturated with characters. You're like, who's this per? Like, what is who? What? Like, they're bad guys. That's all you need to know. And I think that's the big take home from it. But it just gets so oversaturated with characters.
For a trivia match coming up, and it's going to be a little further down the road, so I'm preparing now. But I watched Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, the Guy Ritchie film.
Okay.
It was his first film. It was the film that put him on the map, and I kind of got similar vibes between Lock, Stock, and this. But while Lock, Stock kind of starts out wild with all of these stories and eventually meets at the very end with all of it converging and there's the sort of meeting of these shotguns are the Halford and Halford shotguns are the two like keeping everything together plus the cannabis. At least that you look at it and you go, okay, there's something unifying here. I feel
Yeah.
like the only really unifying idea here is that like Connor and Murphy are see themselves as vigilantes. Like cool, I guess, but like have the Russian or have the Italian mob do something really bad to them and then just be like, all right, we're gonna have our revenge in this life or the next, and then have Willem Dafoe come in as the FBI agent and then track all of them down. I don't know. I feel like this movie was a little too cute in that it was trying to be this like, hey, look at us, we're independent and we're like trying to do
Yeah.
things different. Like, different doesn't always equal good, if that makes any sense.
No, it's almost like how, yeah, to kind of snowball off of it, almost like deliberately trying to be artsy, deliberately trying to be different. And I get it, that's great. But once you just let it breathe, let the movie just breathe on its own. And if people gravitate towards it as an independent, great. Or something creative comes out of it, great. You don't have to be forceful in creativity or, a film being unique. And I just feel like this one, it gets obviously it got a cult following enough to warrant a sequel. To me, it's just like, and like I said, I liked Willem Dafoe. I think it's the best part of the movie. Willem Dafoe goes off obviously on his Willem Dafoe tangents as only he can do, but you kind of pay a little bit more attention to, his character. Obviously, very eccentric. I got my Walkman. Shout out to the CD players back in the day. I got my CD player. I'm listening to like classical music while I'm trying to reconfigure what happened here at the crime scene. I mean, I like that, okay. But at the end of the day, man, it's just not. I like vigilante movies. Like, give me Death Wish. Give me the OG Death Wish with Charles Bronson. Give me, I mean, Die Hard is a vigilante almost. It's like a guy taking care of business. Taken. Other films do the same exact beat, and they don't have to, and they're not being, you know, it all follows the same structure. Good guy trying to, uh, rid bad guys, and have a good day, and I feel like kind of how you said, I think that this kind of takes away from the film, it trying to be way too overboard with things.
What's even more sad is that the action sequences are actually quite entertaining. Like there's one near the very beginning, and I was talking to you about it.
Yeah.
Basically, these Russians catch up the to Connor and Murphy, and I believe, hang on, let me make sure I get it. It's Connor. He's I swear to God, people, I cannot make this up. Connor is handcuffed to a toilet, not the toilet
Yeah.
tank, but a
Yeah.
toilet. He
Yeah.
somehow rips the toilet out of the ground, and
Yeah.
then he makes it all the way up to the roof. And like he's like Masato Tanaka in ECW, he takes it, launches it off the top of the building. The
Yeah.
toilet crashes on the Russian gangster, and
Yeah.
Connor falls down with it and just eats it. I'm surprised he didn't walk away with a broken ankle, let alone two. So,
Yeah.
and I just was sitting there thinking to myself, this is wild. Like I'm just sitting there like the only thing missing is the Tom and Jerry scream or like Elmer
Yeah.
Fudd going "Timber"
Yeah, yeah,
or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, like Wile Coyote and the Roadrunner or some kind of stuff like that, ready for like
Exactly.
an Acme bomb or something to go off.
And then there's a great scene later in the film with Billy Connolly's character, who they're shooting like in the middle of this suburban neighborhood, and it's honestly quite stunning looking. And what's even more frustrating is that they build up Billy Connolly's character, Il Duce. Like they
Yeah,
wheel him out on like a pallet. They got him in this little bird cage looking thing. I'm like, wow, this guy's
like
gonna be something, and not
yeah.
really. No.
No, they give him almost like a Hannibal Lecter treatment. I mean, this guy is so dangerous. And the funny thing is, when they're in a suburban area shooting and stuff like that, the Murphy and Connor aren't moving. They're
No.
staying still in the front. How the hell are they not getting hit? If these guys are supposed to be so excellent at shooting and stuff like that, precision wise, how are we not killing these guys that really aren't even moving? The targets aren't even moving. Just saying. And if this, El Duce, Duce or whatever, his character, Billy Connolly's character, if he's so like a notorious thug or notorious, I get it. Granted, yeah, he's been in prison for 25 to 30 years, they say in the film, but still, those targets aren't that far away, and you are supposed to be like almost like an outlaw. You should be able to shoot these guys with a little bit more precision, I would think. I feel like, I just feel like it gets oversaturated with it, and there's a lot of gunfire and stuff like that. But like, there's nobody getting hit. There's a couple hits here and there, but like, and that's close precision in that close confined area that they're in, shooting back and forth. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to digest.
There's some proper stormtrooper aim in this movie. Like,
Oh,
like
100%.
that's the best I can describe it. At
Yeah, 100%.
the end of the day, like I get why people would like something like this, but like I think Russell and I are trying to do and discuss, this idea has been done way better. Like I feel like there's a John Wick movie hidden in this script
Yeah,
somewhere. Like if Connor and Murphy were like had family members that had a seat at the table, like the table in the John Wick series, I'm like, this would make
yeah.
a lot more sense.
Yeah, I mean it would. I mean, kudos to getting actually Irish dissented people. Obviously Flannery and I can't. What's his name from
Norman Reedus.
Reedus? He is Irish too, from Walking Dead, obviously. But yeah, they're both of Irish descent, so that I always appreciate when they do things a little bit, to form there. I kept thinking and laughing during the movie, thinking, God, this would be so much better if Colin Farrell was one of the leads. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I just think that would be badass because Colin Farrell's he's smooth like that. Especially in the 2000s, I think I could easily have seen him, before he kind of blew up a little bit in the mid 2000s, early to mid 2000s. I think he would have been a really good choice for a an Irish vigilante.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean,
Yeah.
he, he was perfect in The Gentleman. Like, just take that character and put it in this world, and it just makes total
Oh,
sense.
even really good in The Recruit with Al Pacino, another really underrated film. I thought he was fantastic in that film. Phone Booth, I liked a lot. He had some bangers in the early 2000s, man. I even like SWAT. SWAT was a guilty pleasure at the time. But yeah.
For me personally, on my scale, this movie's pretty forgettable. And I get why people would like this, and I get why it got a following, but it just wasn't for me. And one more note I did want to bring up before we move on. This movie was supposed to get a bigger release. However, a little thing, not a little thing, a big thing called Columbine happened around the same time with the test screenings. And so the studio pretty much just put the kibosh on promoting this in any form, which I totally understand why, considering the subject matter.
Obviously.
And
Yeah,
so
obviously.
and if Wikipedia is to be believed, this movie ended up only being shown in total of 5 theaters across the US when it got released. Now, obviously, it got a sequel, got a big following afterwards, so word of mouth carried this movie home, but One of the things I found interesting about one doing the 99 project is that movies like Teaching Mrs. Tingle and Scream 3, which is going to be coming up here on the channel very soon for the 2000 project, how those movies were affected because of Columbine, among other things. The ripple effects are genuinely felt. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
truly a sad, terrible incident, but you just look at it and you go, I wonder if in another hypothetical world how this would have been different.
Oh, and then you're going to have a year later in 2001, the terrorist attacks in New York City, Twin Towers, with that
9/11.
ripple effect, with 9/11, with the ripple effects of movies being postponed and held away because of the devastation in New York City that day. So yeah, those types of events, the significant events like that, obviously the ripple effects felt throughout the whole throughout the world and because of film and entertainment and stuff like that, just out of respect for the lives that were taken and lives that were lost because of these events. I understand it, but kind of what you said, the Boondock Saints kind of like revised itself anyway. It didn't really need that release because of the fact that they got that cult following, obviously, to warrant a sequel. So to me, it's like I think everything worked out how it was supposed to work out for them. But like you said, kind of a middle of the road film. It's one just to kind of like I just kind of describe it as just like a I mean, it's okay, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's just there's better action films that carry out the same type of uh, you know, plot, i.e., Death Wish.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, let us move on now. Let's take a hard left in terms of general tone and subject material, and let's talk about Down to You.
Freddie Prinze Jr., Julia Stiles, Down to You.
Down to You was directed by Chris Isaacson, and it starred, well, quite frankly, a lot of people. And I think we could just spend a few minutes just naming off all of the people who would be big or were big in the 2000s, like in this movie. But the two main stars are Freddie Prinze Jr. and Julia Stiles, who play Al and Imogen, respectively. They meet at a college party, and they immediately hit it off, and they get into a relationship, and the movie chronicles the rise and fall and redemption of said relationship. I had no knowledge of this movie, Russell, going into it, which is why I love doing year projects like this. Go out of my way to watch movies I would never see in any other context. And just from that premise alone, I'm sure people would be like, yep, I know exactly the movie you're talking about. It's formulaic as all get out, but I'm not
100%.
gonna lie, I really enjoyed this one, like more than I was expecting.
No, the same. And obviously, like we were talking, Freddie Prinze Jr. huge, obviously, with I Know What You Did Last Summer, She's All That, obviously had that, she had like he had all that traction. And same with Julia Stiles. She was 10 Things I Hate About You. Later on, I think Save the Last Dance, which was I think around the year after. I think it was 01, 02-ish. Save the Last Dance. I mean, she was big in her right too. So I understand why kind of what you said earlier or when we were chatting back and forth. It's like kind of a time capsule of a who's who type thing. You kind of know. But honestly, I'm a sucker for rom-coms. I told you that before. I remember I might have seen this movie in the theater. I don't remember. I don't remember it, but I mean, just because it's formulaic, like you said, it's like I don't remember. And I knew the poster, I knew what the cover looked like, but yeah, I had fun with it. I enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, and I think, and like I said, what I was talking about, this is just a big old picture of people who would be big in the 2000s or like had a few years where they were just popping off. Like Selma Blair is in this movie, who I remember as Liz Sherman from Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy films. Sean
Okay.
Sean Hatasi is in this movie, and he was in a little movie called The Faculty, which I really love. And that's a
Oh,
time capsule of the
that's such
late
a great one.
90s as well. Yeah,
It's,
it's awesome.
that's a great
Ash
one, man.
Ashton Kutcher plays a pothead, I want to say, wearing a bad wig, but he's in one scene, but he is in this. Rosario
Yeah.
Rosario Dawson is in this movie. Henry Winkler, the Fonz is in this movie.
Oh
Like
yeah.
you just look up and down and you're just like, oh wow, this is just like a picture of people who either were big at the time or would be big at a time. Like Jimmy Fallon and Adam Carolla are both in this movie, and I just had to sit there and think to myself, wow, 25 years, and these two are far different people than what they were in this. And I won't go too deep into that, but I just was bowled over by just how 2000 this all felt, I guess.
Well, yeah, well, Corolla and Jimmy Kimmel, I think you meant obviously. I knew what you meant, Jimmy Kimmel. They had the Man Show, so that was obviously time capsule to that. The Man Show was a show that they had, obviously, and I thought it was funny because it really dated, it dated that specifically to that. My first taste of Selma Blair was Cruel Intentions. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, so like I don't know. The movie is formulaic, but to me, I buy the chemistry between Freddie Prinze and Julia Stiles. I like it. And I just appreciate the only thing I thought was kind of overboard was the whole shampoo thing. I thought that was kind of crazy. Like, but I get it. I mean, it's kind of funny later on when you think about it. But I mean, that was kind of like really. But outside of that, though, I think it's not taking itself too over seriously. I mean, I think it's just one of those, those chick flicks, those rom coms that popped up in the 2000s all the time. And I think this one's fine.
I thought it was rather silly though when the breakup happens. Like there's a great scene like where it's revealed something happens. I won't spoil it, but it's something happens to where it's like they're on the verge of breakup and this is the thing that really sets it off. Freddie Prinze Jr. has
Yeah.
a moment where I'm just like, "Oh wow, you're definitely more than just Fred from the James Gunn Scooby-Doo movies. You're actually good at your job." But
Yeah,
then
for sure.
then he gets drunk and then he does a whole thing and then he ends up drinking a bottle of shampoo, which I
Yeah.
get it for the context of the movie, it's
Yeah.
significant to him, but when I just
Yeah.
saw that, I'm just like, oh wow, like
Yeah.
the amazing story, like be in the hospital and be like, how'd you get here? Oh, I broke my leg running, and be like, how'd you get here? Oh, I dislocated my shoulder. Like, how'd you get here? I drank a bottle of shampoo.
And then everybody was worried that he was gonna die. It's like, dude, it's not gonna get you. That's not gonna kill you. It's gonna get you sick, but I don't think you're gonna die from it.
Just pump
Um,
your stomach and get him out of here.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I get it though. In retrospect, though, yeah, Freddie Prinze Jr. does, a solid job. I mean, obviously was typecast in the '90s and 2000s, just like anybody else. I.e., give you Gerard Butler in chick flicks, to get his start, with the Bounty Hunter and P.S. I Love You, until he kind of found his footing and kind of went his own way. Like, but same thing with Freddie Prinze, though, man. Summer Cat or Wing Commander. How can we forget about that atrocious film, Wing Commander? She's All That. All you have some of the films that usually he was in like romantic comedies, and then kind of just did his own thing. Then ended up going family friendly with Scooby Doo, and then kind of just really disappeared.
I mean, he's clearly made his money, so like he's
Yeah,
basically like he does a lot of Star Wars stuff. Like he was a voice in
yeah,
Star Wars Rebels, which is a really good show. If anyone out there has not watched that show, watch it. It's quite good. And
yep,
then like he's married to Sarah Michelle Gellar, so the dude like he made
yeah,
it, and like he's
yeah, yeah.
clearly saved his money, so he's like in the stage of life where he's like I can just chill. Like I can just chill for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and you've been with, Sarah Michelle Gellar since their filming of I Know What You Did Last Summer. Then they ended up, getting married shortly thereafter or whatever. But yeah, I mean, and you figure that's over 25 years old. So, kudos to him.
And we're getting another I Know What You Did Last Summer movie, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. I liked seeing Selma Blair. Like I've always been a fan of hers. I mean, she's she has MS, unfortunately, nowadays. She is in
Yeah,
very poor health, which is a shame because I always loved her in the Hellboy movies. I legit forgot she was in Cruel Intentions, and I like that movie.
yeah.
I covered it for 99, so good catch on that one. But
And she
I
was in,
liked her here.
did you ever see why? Oh man, it's the movie. Is it The Sweetest Thing? she was in, I believe, with was it
It's
Cameron Diaz and
it
Christina
sounds
Applegate?
sounds familiar.
The Sweetest Thing. I'm thinking Selma Blair was definitely in that.
It's
Um,
this one, right?
is it The Sweetest Thing? Or
Uh,
am I wrong? Is she
Selma
not in that? Okay, I guess I'm wrong. I swear I thought she was in. I
Cameron
thought she was
Diaz,
in.
Christina Applegate, Jane, excuse me, Selma Blair. This has a good little cast here.
Oh, okay, so she wasn't in it. Okay, I thought I was wrong. Yeah, I enjoyed that movie. I mean, she was good in like a lot of the things that she was in the early 2000s. I liked that a lot. Um, she was good. In Good Company was another good movie with Topher Grace and Scarlett Joe. A guy thing with said Julia Stiles again in 2003, which I think is kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, she was definitely a very talented actress. It's a shame that with her MS obviously not doing a whole lot of work now.
Yeah, like I said, it's a shame because I thought like the Hellboy movies that Del Toro did are very underrated, both of them. And
100%.
she's one of my favorite parts. But when we get to if we ever get to 2004 or 2008, and I believe we will, then we'll cross that bridge. But I think as far as Down to You goes, I'm going to give this a good rating, and I did not expect to give it that high a rating, but I
Yeah.
like this movie. It was very nice. It was very pleasant to sit through, and it was is a nice story. Predictable, sure, but sometimes that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, just like we said prior to this film, you don't have to go above and beyond to try to be different. One plus one equals two. You don't have to be fancy to get there. And I like this film fine, kind of on the same boat as you are with this. I'd throw it between like out of a five, maybe like a two and a half, a three. I think it's fine. It's serviceable. It's definitely one. And again, the other thing I think about too is rewatchability. I'd rewatch this. Yeah,
I agree. Well,
yeah, for sure.
to close things out this time around, let us now dive into a movie that even after it was over, I was struggling to think of things to like talk
Uh,
about with this one. It's Eye
man.
of the Beholder.
I've seen you someplace before.
Eye of the Beholder.
Eye of the Beholder
God.
was directed by Stephen Elliott and it starred Ewan McGregor and Ashley Judd. And it tells the story of a man who is a surveillance expert. He's played by Ewan McGregor, and he's hired to spy on someone who is blackmailing a rich person's son. And it turns out she is quite a lot more sinister than that. So Russell was very clearly cringing when I was bringing up Eye of the Beholder. I don't know if the camera caught that. Zoom can be a very fickle thing sometimes, but this movie, like I said, I struggle to remember anything about it, which is a bit of a shame because Ewan McGregor is the big star in this. He's 8 months removed from Phantom Menace, and like
Yeah,
this is the thing that he chose first. That's a bold strategy, and it did not work
yeah.
for him.
Yeah, I didn't know. I remember the movie once I saw the cover. Then it kind of hit a trigger point. But this is also a several couple years removed. Ashley Judd. She was in Heat. She was in Kiss the Girls. She was in Double Jeopardy. She was a very good actress in the late 90s going into the 2000s. Let's not forget that. And I kind of and obviously Ewan McGregor as well. You see those two names and you're like, oh, this movie should be pretty good. But I feel like we didn't know where we were trying to go with this film, like at all.
The frustrating thing is that this movie reminded me so much of Vertigo, like the Alfred Hitchcock film. It's like you take the man chasing mysterious woman aspect of Vertigo and you cross it over with the cross country aspect of North by Northwest, and you've got Eye of the Beholder, but lesser than both of those things.
Well, then the other thing that I kind of thought about, and that's why I wanted to save it for this to discuss, because I told you on chat that there was something I wanted to bring up. The fact that he was kind of almost a unreliant narrator. I kind of thought that with him having those visions of his, it's going to be his, it's his daughter. It's not spoiling anything. You think that was going to play a kind of something that was going to happen there. But then you also thought, well, maybe this girl isn't as bad. This Ashley Judd's character isn't as bad as she seems, or somehow maybe they're kind of related. They have a backstory together. You know what I mean? I just kind of thought that unreliable narrator of Ewan McGregor during the film was going to you know, uh, almost like a whack-a-mole and pop back up for something. Because I honestly thought I'm thinking maybe, oh well, maybe that's his wife. I mean, did you ever think that when you were watching it? Maybe thinking that they were going to make it like that somehow?
I was thinking that they may have gone in that direction, but
Yeah,
to be completely honest, like the first few minutes of the movie, it seems like it's setting up this rich kid got into trouble, and now it's like his dad's hired this guy to basically look out for him. And then it pivots into Ashley Judd killing someone, and you're like, where did this
yeah,
come from? And then
yeah.
we're off to the races there. There's like it hits you like a freight train, and you're just sitting there like, I have a lot of questions, and I don't think this movie has the answers to those questions.
Yeah, like all of a sudden it's like, okay, so wait, Ewan McGregor's almost like the cleaner. Like code name the cleaner. He just comes in and pretty much does like little touch up work to make sure that nobody knows that Ashley Judd's character killed or you know what I mean or did wrong. He almost puts the band-aid on the boo boo. You know what I mean? But kind of what you said. I think this movie then it also feels like a at times a James Bond esque with like the secret meeting with like almost like a Q or an M type of thing. You know what I mean? Where we're like, and shout out to this because like this technology here foreshadowed face to face like FaceTime and stuff like that. So I kudos to that because I mean that was technology we were running in 2000, which was the like obviously forerunning for foreshadowing to what we have now, which is completely crazy. But it almost felt like that type of thing too, like almost that type of I guess that James Bond vibe they were going for as well. Like he's a secret agent. He can just quit whenever he wants to. You know what I mean? It's just yeah, this movie didn't know what it wanted to do.
Just because this movie predicted what everyone had to do for work in 2020, that doesn't make it a good movie. Like it just because it can time travel doesn't make
Yeah,
this movie forgettable. And this movie is pretty forgettable. And if this seems short for me, I'm just struggling to come up with things to like even say about it. Like I just feel
yeah,
like things just happen with nothing really connecting them. And when like this big car accident happens at the end of the film, I'm
yeah.
like, I don't care. I'm like,
Well,
I just don't care.
but you think that even then, in that moment, there, it's going to connect it somehow together, and it doesn't. Like
No,
you never get the answers that you want. Um, the only lady that really plays a role is that lady that Ewan McGregor talks to at the academy or whatever, that she comes back around in the end, which I mean, I kind of get that. And Ashley Judd recognizing her, and you know what I mean. Obviously, I'm not going to go into it too deeply, but like I appreciate the consistency of that. But outside of that, though, man, not a whole lot to stand on with this one. This is a definitely a forgettable film.
for sure. But I pass it off to all of you. What did you think of any of the films we talked about? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to read what you have to say. And Russell, it's a privilege to do this with you. Well, I'm calling my Friday videos, but my Friday content, I'm grateful to do this with you every Friday. But tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, Notorious by Chance. We've been kind of dormant just because of the fact that we're both trying to catch up for our top 20 performances of 24. We're trying to catch movies. I know I really want to try to catch The Brutalist this weekend. I want to see if that with the word of mouth and everything about it, the movie's fantastic. I just can't it's the 3.5 hour runtime. I think that's really like is the Russ don't do it. Russ don't do it. You know what I mean? Like I'm like that's a it's an undertaking. It's definitely a trip to Mordor, but we'll see what happens. You guys can find us there, Notorious by Chance on YouTube also. Yeah, he'll put content up. I think he just had something on there with football, but we will be recording sometime probably in the next week. We're going to do the top performances of 2024, and then we still got to do our top 10 movies of 2024 and our David Lynch episode on Mulholland Drive too. So we got a lot of things down the road here that we're going to work on. So yeah,
Give them a subscribe, like the Facebook group, do the thing there. And it's crazy to live in a world where we have The Brutalist in theaters, which is 3.5 hours, and we have a Dogman movie that's 90 minutes.
Which, dude, and I'm like really tempted. I really want to take my daughter to go see that. I'm looking forward to that one. I think that'll be fun.
I'm a huge DreamWorks fan. That's why
Yeah.
I'm remotely interested. But the Captain Underpants movie, which Dogman is a
Oh,
spin-off of Captain Underpants, I like that more than I was expecting. So,
yeah, 100%. I took Ella in there, not even hearing it. I didn't know they were kids' books. I had no idea. I was pleasantly surprised, man. I really enjoyed that.
right. Well, subscribe to them, do the thing there. Next Friday will be the Horror Movie Iceberg podcast where we watch disturbing horror movies until we tap out. And it's going to be a double header that time around. We're going to be taking a look at Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, and the Blair Witch sort of kind of remake that Adam Wingard directed, which I remember liking, but I have not seen in legitimately over 10 years. So it's going to be very
Oh,
interesting to check out.
I remember seeing it in the drive, and I think it was the second film in the double bill of the drive-in when we went. I think Beck and I went. Yeah, we went and saw it, and I haven't seen it since. So I'm kind of like you. I'm kind of curious to get my feet wet again with that.
Well, that'll be next week. But for this week, for Russell, my name is Ryan Cam. We will see you all in the next one. You all take care.